this is Ben Quechuan. Today I'm talking about the 4 types of languages. What are they? Hey, hit that subscribe button, it really helps the channel. Thank you so much. There are only 4 types of languages. You have gluing languages, agglutinative, analytic languages, which are isolators. You have fusional languages, which are like between the two on a spectrum. And you have polysynthetic languages, shapeshifters. Today, it's polysynthetic languages. If you are thinking of learning a language or you're interested in languages and you don't know which language quite to learn, well, knowing how languages work really helps. If you want to learn a difficult language, or if you want to learn a language that's not difficult but one that's far away from your current language, it helps to understand which languages are closer to your language in terms of how they work, even if they're unrelated to each other. There are only 4 types. So we know what languages means. What does polysynthetic mean? Well, there's 2 words there, poly and synthetic. Poly means many or a large number. Synthetic means literally the syncing of things into place. Placing many things together. So many placings together. Words in polysynthetic languages are really long because the way they form ideas is very different. So in Spanish, yo hablo, I speak, and you conjugate the hablar, to speak, with the o, the first person pronoun. And in, well, Basque, Mendira, to the mountain. And you see that these are 2 different ways of putting things together, ideas to convey meaning. But in polysynthetic languages, those 2 are fused both together. The who is doing it and what is it being done to. All into one word, and the different parts change what the other parts convey. Which makes this very difficult to explain or even classify in linguistics. Just me looking at it from, well, the first time really making this video, I find these languages really fascinating, primarily because I've never encountered anything like it before. Where are these languages then? Which languages are they? Before I show you where these languages are, please remember that these are on a spectrum, just like all the other categories, and many of these overlap into agglutinative. So the Quechuan languages, which I talked about in the last video, they overlap between agglutinative and polysynthetic. So where are these languages? The Kamchakan languages and the Chuki languages of Far East Russia. The Mayan languages. Mixtezoquian of the Mexico Isthmus. The Northern Australian languages, and many of those in Papua New Guinea. Mapudungun of South America. Some Northwest Caucasian languages, these are language isolates. And Ainu, a language isolate in Japan. Also Salishan, the languages which would be familiar to you as the Chief Seattle, where the name of the city Seattle gets its name. The Quechuan languages, and many of the Amazonian languages as well. The Iroquoian languages. These are mildly agglutinative, but they overlap into polysynthetic. They're very concentrated in the Americas, which is why they're not known as much, because a lot of them frankly got wiped out. So you see that these are not evenly distributed. They are languages, for the most part, which have been pushed back by other language types, and so it's difficult to find resources on these languages. But let's get some examples so you're more familiar with it. So let's look at Cherokee, just to see how it works. So this big word here in Cherokee means I was seeing something facing me. Don't quote my pronunciation of this Cherokee word. I don't speak Cherokee. Let's break that down. What does this word mean piece by piece? Da means the object is facing the speaker. Tsi is the first person subject, literally I or me. Gauti is the root of the verb to see something, to see. Ski or SG shows that the verb is an ongoing action. It's happening at that time. And VE shows past tense. So combining that past tense with see literally means seen or saw. Each of these parts don't make sense on their own, and that's why it's polysynthetic. Polysynthetic languages are highly synthetic languages. Languages in which words are composed of many morphemes. The degree of synthesis refers to the morpheme to word ratio. Languages with more than one morpheme per word are synthetic. Polysynthetic languages lie at the extreme end of the synthesis continuum, with a very high number of morphemes per word. At the other extreme are isolating or analytic languages with only one morpheme per word. These highly synthetic languages often have very long words that correspond to complete sentences in less synthetic languages. Examples of polysynthetic languages include Inuktitut, Mohawk, Classical Ainu, Central Siberian Yupik, Cherokee, Sora, Chukchi, and numerous other languages of North America and Siberia. The Ojibwe language is also polysynthetic, and this means being able to speak Ojibwe. Ba'at anita nish ina bimong. That's quite a mouthful for me, but I guess if we're used to it, it wouldn't be, because each part is a specific meaning. So all those different parts and those multiple vowels are pieces attaching onto each other. This doesn't work like the other three types or the other groups, Fusional, Analytical, and Agglutinative, as I mentioned in the other 3 videos of this 4-part series. That's quite different, and it makes it very difficult for people from other language groups to actually understand, because it works in such a different way. Each of these parts reflect the other parts, changing them according to what meaning you need to convey. Cherokee is a bit more on the agglutinative end, as I mentioned. But what about polysynthetic languages which aren't as towards that end of the polysynthetic spectrum? You have a language called Cuiba in South America, and here's a sentence from that language. It's one word, no maxi peri, no dibome. And let's break that apart, what this means. The na at the beginning is a reflexive pronoun. It reflects whatever pronoun is at the end. So you know before you go into all this, it's talking about someone rather than yourself. Then you have the 3 nouns here, the skin, the arm, and the hair. And they're in a specific order, so you know which is being done to what. It's interesting that hair is na, the same sound as that initial pronoun. So you would need to put it in a specific location for it to make sense, and with other parts. Dobome is made of that taking off verb, and that me, rather than being you actually, it just conveys that it's a second person singular. And this is something common across polysynthetic languages. In this one word, everything's around that verb to take off. It's like planets orbiting a sun, and the satellites are communicating with each other to create a sentence within one word. Because the verbs in these polysynthetic languages, they go one step further than what we saw with the conjugations in the fusional languages. In Welsh or French, when you conjugate a verb, you're just saying who's done it, or doing it, and what time they're doing it in, the tense. But with polysynthetic languages, you are saying who's doing the action, when it's happening, and who's it being done to or by. So there's 3 things going on rather than just 2, and you're often conveying in the same word what it's being done to or what's being done. It's a much more comprehensive thing to express in a single word, and that's why parts can't actually stand on their own. They reflect into each other, and they change according to which part is in the other part, which makes polysynthetic languages quite difficult to classify. Polysynthetic languages represent in a single word what in English would take an entire sentence to convey. I don't know much about polysynthetic languages myself, but from just doing this video, I find them really interesting, and they're worth at least seeing, so you know they exist. So now if you're learning a language, any language in the world that's a spoken language, you know that it's on the spectrum of these 4 different types of language, and you can better then approach a language being able to pick it apart and understand it, which side of the spectrum it's on, towards more agglutinative or more analytic. And this means that you can pick up languages faster by understanding basic bits of grammar about each of these categories. I hope you found this information useful, and thank you very much for watching. Diolch yn fawr am wylio. We will see you next time.